more and more people in that area where you are.
People can't even enjoy going to see people.
That's the way it's getting. You feel so sorry for them.
The guy come down the bar drinking all the drink. And well, she doesn't fit. He hollered, "Hey, Tommy, come here, Tommy." And I went over there. He said, "Open the door."
What do you think, Artie?
Position on the name of the aircraft, and what was your position on it?
I was co-pilot, and the crew had named the aircraft. It was a B-29, of course, and they had named it the Pee-wee after the first pilot's wife, whose nickname was Pee-wee.
And was this your first mission, or was this
First one.
first mission for you?
That's right. We had arrived on Saipan about a week or 10 days prior to this mission, and we were shot down on the very first one.
What can you tell us? What you were, where you were going to bomb, or what your mission was?
We did bomb Nagoya. It was a 37,000-foot mission, and we had had engine problems on the way up, but we were able to cope with it until after we had left the target, and then we lost the engine.
How many engines did you have?
4.
And how many went out?
Just one, but it was crucial because we could not transfer the fuel from it, and consequently we couldn't make base, which was Saipan.
So what did you think about when you had to abandon your aircraft in the middle of nowhere? What was going to happen to you?
There were many mixed thoughts. Going down, of course, I felt that was it, because there have been very few crews rescued that had ditched. So consequently, it's very hard to explain, and it'd take a lot of words.
Did they tell you anything about there's going to be a submarine out there?
No, we knew our friends that came back we had ditched on one evening, the evening of the 18th, and our friends were back up there, our people we were flying with. There were numerous planes came back up to search for us, and they had about given up, but the last guy took one more sweep and caught our flare, and he came over us and dropped a flare bomb with a note attached that rescue facilities was on the way. But we did not know what the rescue facilities was, and so...
You didn't know whether it was going to be an airplane or a submarine or what?
That's right, and of course, I'd never seen a submarine in my life, so we had no knowledge. It was really a surprise when your sub came over the horizon.
What were your thoughts at that time?
Very frankly, 3 of us had our 45s trained right on the guy that was on the bow, which happened to be your exec officer, and thinking that if the ship was Japanese, we had no way of knowing whether it was friend or foe, and we would have tried to have cleared the deck of that thing long enough to have gotten away from it. But the first words he said were, "Can you handle a line?" And so we knew then that it was friend.
Good.
Beautiful words.
What were your impressions when you first got on board the ship?
He's coming. He's saying goodbye.
Fright when I woke up the next morning. I had had a injury, and so when he while the Ed Chappett, as I remember his name, was sewing it up, he had anesthetized it to the point that I had just fallen asleep and I didn't know anything until the next morning. And but when I did wake aboard that submarine and knew that we were underwater, it was fright. And so different. I had never even, as I say, I'd never even seen one, let alone been on one, and under that much water.
You had quite an experience. You're also exposed to some Japanese prisoners, and all on the same occasion.
That's right. And that was an experience. It was a real experience to be within the submarine and hear the fire of your deck guns when they had attacked the ship that they did. It sounded just like being in a barrel and somebody hammering on it with a ball-peen hammer. But and not knowing what was going on and out of our element was it was really something.
You didn't realize at the time what good friends you'd make that would last this long.
That's right. It never crossed my mind that I would be with so many of these people tonight, like we were tonight.
And I understand also that you went back then and formed a new crew.
That's right. And finished out our missions. We flew a total of 33, 32 of which was after this our ditching.
Oh,
Bye-bye. Good seeing you.
thank you. I'm
Cliff
your
Smith.
name today.
Well, I'm Cliff Smith.
Okay. Okay, Cliff, go ahead. Tell me.
I'd like to tell you about when the Spearfish took us on board the submarine. Of course, they said, "Hustle, we got to get you down this conning tower." Says, "We've got to submerge here because we're in Japanese waters." And I think that or they said something about some planes coming out after us. So they took us down. We were all in a little group there, I think in a room fairly close to the conning tower. And the executive officer, he broke out some brandy. And he poured a full tumbler full of this brandy. And he proffered this brandy to me. And of course, he hadn't realized that I was really a small town boy from Mobley Junior College, and our coach didn't allow us to drink whiskey or smoke cigarettes, or if we did, we couldn't be on the football team. So I never had changed those habits. So he proffered this glass of brandy to me, and I didn't know what to do, and I said, "Sir, I don't drink." So this executive officer, he took this whole tumbler, and he says, "Well, I don't want that to go to waste." He took the whole thing, did about 2 gulps. That was one of the many amusing incidents I had on that submarine.
What was your first impression when you saw the spearfish?
Well, when that spearfish was bearing down upon us, you know, coming from the Midwest, we didn't know one boat from another. We knew it was a ship of some kind. We didn't know whether it was Japanese or American. Those of us that had gotten out with their 45s had them drawn and pointed at this thing coming at us. So it was sort of hazy, and it was at dusk, and our visibility wasn't too good. And we didn't know but what were Japanese coming in there, so we knew we were in Japanese waters. So it was quite a relief when someone on the prow of that submarine said, "Can you handle a line?" With that, we knew we were in pretty good shape.
What do you remember about being on board the ship? Any funny incidents?
Well, I'll tell you, one thing that amazed me was Christmas Day in 1944. We were cruising off of Tokyo Bay. We took the day off, so we went underneath about 60 or 100 feet, I forget just which. And the cook did some rather marvelous things. We had turkey, we had dressing, we had all the fixins, we had strawberry shortcake, and to top it all off afterwards, they had a moving picture, and I can still...
You have to tell me, we probably saw that movie about 10 times.
You remember it too, do you?
Anyway, it's nice to be back after this many years.
It certainly is, and again, let me say thank you. So many good things have happened to me since we got on the spearfish, and after we were rescued, we were able to fly 30 some odd more missions. We've had a wonderful life afterwards. Always had plenty to eat. And we thank you again.
Okay.
I was the commander, the aircraft commander of the B-29 Pee-wee that you folks fortunately came along and fished us out of the sea, myself and my crew, what there were of us. And it seems incredible that that all happened 50 years ago last December.
Let's go back to the beginning. When did your crew get together, and where did the name Pee Wee come from?
Well, the crew came together. Rudiments and parts of it began to come together. It's awful. I guess I've got Alzheimer's because the names of all the places. There was a base that was forming B-29 crews in New Mexico, Clovis, and I picked up one or two there, and then 3 or 4 more, and then finally we got up to Kansas, where some of the crew members were shifted to other crews, and it was kind of a process where, they'd fill in the holes and finally got us all together. The final crew, as was experienced when you gentlemen came along and fished us out of the water, was assembled there in Kansas. And we remained intact until, I say the final crew, this was the crew before the pickup. We did get 4 replacements for the boys that we lost, and then we finished out the war with the same people.
Where did you fly? Hang on just a second. I want to just double check that I talked about Alzheimer's. I'll cut this off.
I can't even remember the name of the base. I'll think of it in a minute. Walker, Kansas. Walker, Kansas. I didn't think I'd ever. Near Russell, that's right.
What did your crew fly the 29 over to Tinian? Is that where you operated out of?
No, we left Walker, Kansas, in the fall. It was roughly, if I remember right, it was October, somewhere around October. And then we went up to Lincoln, Nebraska, and that's where we picked up the ship that we took overseas with us. We assembled there in Lincoln, and then we shook the airplane down. We took a flight down over Cuba and back up the line, and then from there on the appointed day, we left Lincoln, Nebraska, and flew to Albuquerque, and from there we flew to McClellan Field, and little stops along the way. The next step, we flew into Hickam Field. We had an incredible experience there at Hickam. It shows what you can do when we all don't think alike. But to make a long story short, we blew out 2 tires on the right-hand side on a takeoff, and the airplane, after blowing out those tires, we were lucky enough to get it off the ground without digging the props in. But we had such a load of gas, such a load of gasoline that we couldn't land right away without some element of risk that we didn't want to face. And so they had us circling around over Hickam for 8 hours, or not Hickam, but in that area, flying over the area, burning up the gas. And so when we got, I think I said about 8 hours, 7 or 8 hours, we made a landing. And as far as I know, that was the first time that they'd ever had a landing with both tires blown out on the same side. And so naturally they wanted to get a picture of everything that was happening in case we couldn't live to tell the same big lie. And all of the crew, boy, we were really all doing our job. I believe it was, I forgot, but I believe it was, could have been Mickle or Smith, that we jettisoned a lot of the smoke bombs out of the front end of that thing before we landed, and One of them partially, it didn't explode, but we got some residual stuff back in the cockpit, and for a little while there we were fighting.
Was this on the Pee-wee?
This was on the Pee-wee, yeah. They're
There at Pearl.
circling over Hawaii, Pearl. But anyway, we made the landing, and we got our tires changed, and it was quite a, we had a little critique to try to smooth out our operation inside. And we, not all of us, Chet and I were both, I don't like to use the word fault, we were human. We just didn't, both of us together didn't really.
Human error?
Yeah, human error, yeah. Yeah, but anyway, we lived through that. But I'm telling you, that first instant, when I was lifting that thing off the ground, and then it started to settle back in, and it all happened so fast you couldn't make all these corrections. It started to settle in, and it settled in and blew the tires, but we got the power back on, and we made it, and that was the main issue. But I remember there was a bombardier in front, and I can't remember what that guy's name was. He wasn't our bombardier normally. He was another part of the older fellow, part of another crew, and we were taking him over. And boy, he all of a sudden, as the airplane started to settle back in the ground, he pulled away, because he's sitting up in the nose where all of that greenhouse is, and boy, he could see that runway and everything coming at him. When you're doing 100 and some miles an hour, 30, whatever. I do remember another thing. I remember that when we made a turn out, there used to be, and I don't know if it's still there, probably gone, a large pineapple that sat.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
That sat there as it was a water tower.
Yeah.
And I never saw the people. I was too busy flying, but I was out of the corner of my eye. Once in a while, I was seeing these guys were bailing out of streetcars and getting out of the street because this huge airplane was down just about the level of that pineapple. See, it took a while to get to get your speed up and everything.
You think this might have been a omen or a foreboding of things to come? Did you think about that, or? No,
you didn't. I didn't have any time to think about that. You always try. We're all frail. We all, every damn one of us, if we're honest, we make a lot of mistakes. Not deliberately, they just happen. And this was one that we learned, we lived through it and hopefully learned by it. I don't think we ever did have that kind of a problem in the cockpit after that.
Did you then fly then? Did you base at Tinian, and what was the Air Force?
Oh, no. We flew from Hawaii to Johnson Island and gassed, and then we flew to Saipan. Isley Field was the name of the base there. Got in there in early December. Now, wait a minute. Early December? Early December, I believe. Either the first few days of December or the last of November. And I think it was, now can you imagine, it took from mid to late October all the way up to December for us to shake that airplane down and get all those wrinkles out and take our turn in line for maintenance at Hawaii to get our wheels changed and everything checked out again, be sure we didn't dig any of the props in and everything. And then we flew a practice mission off of Saipan. It took all that time just before we really got a first-rate combat experience, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And that's when you guys come along and made damn sure that we completed it.
This was your first mission then?
This was our first. We had flown a couple of practice missions, one or two, where we flew over enemy-held territory, but I mean, it was just some little island up the road that we used as a bombing practice, and the natives lived on it. There was no major fortifications. I don't think there were any on it, and we just go up there and fly and make a bomb run to kind of get us used to being. I believe that we got to Saipan about just a few days before. They had a bunch of bombings from the Japanese who were based at Iwo, come to think of it. Forgot about that.
We were based there also, tender, and I could tell you stories about how we tried to show a movie topside, and it took us 12 times to get the movie underway. We ran the movie, we started it just after dusk, and I think it was 6 o'clock in the morning when we finally got the movie done, because we had air raids every half an hour.
Yeah.
That's what you guys experienced.
Yeah, and we had, I remember there was a pillbox right by the side of our Quonset hut, and we saw the inside of it a few times before we actually got to fly a real first-class mission that took us, I say first class, what would you say? I won't use the Navy term, because it sounds better, bit more miles, roughly a 3,000-mile trip before we flew that first mission on the 18th of December.
Well, then tell me about the mission. Where were you going, and the purpose of the mission and so forth, and anything that happened on the way up?
I don't recall anything happening on the way up, but we really studied the targets, and we checked the nuts and the bolts, and I guess I'm just a natural worrywart. I'm an overachiever. I worry about every little thing in the world. That's one thing that I can say about old Chid. Now, Chid was take it easy, more calm, and kind of a balance out there, He doesn't know it, I don't guess, but I appreciated that. It kind of made me realize, what the heck? It's kind of, this is a serious game, but you got to maybe get a moment to relax a little bit too. But anyway, we took off there at Saipan, and it was a night mission to start with. It was a day mission actually, but it was, as I recall, it was dark when we took off, or just getting in the dawn. And the takeoff is always a challenge, because you've got to level out, and if you got any altitude, you drop down a little bit if you can, to get the speed you need to overcome your, what we call single engine. If you lose an engine, you're in trouble, and you want to get the speed where that won't happen. Get enough speed to where if you lose an engine, you still got the way you're weighed out, you can do the job. That was another thing that was always stressful. The plane was originally designed for 125,000 pounds, and man, we flew them to 138, 140, 141,000 all the time. I don't think I ever flew a mission up there, or anybody else flying the same kind of mission that didn't fly an airplane that was way overloaded by the scale, and we had to try to compensate by that. And we were fortunate enough to do that. But anyway, we flew up to Japan, and now it's daylight. And I remember one of the first things I saw, I thought, my, what an ugly looking thing that is. But I think it really wasn't ugly, it was just in my mind. I was imagining all of the horror stories, they had told us to prepare us for the possibility that we might not, that we might be taken prisoner or something. And it just looked ugly. But get back to concentration on the initial point. Now you're turning down on the down. And fighters, I don't think I have ever seen so many little mosquitoes flying everywhere. Little fighters.
Well, you had a lot of fighters.
Oh, man. At least when I looked out, we did. But on the others, but we were up so high that we were looking down on everything. And the target was Nagoya, Japan. And to this day, I'm not sure if it was the docks we were after or if it was the area adjacent to the docks. But it was primarily the dock area of Nagoya. And to this day, I don't know for sure if we hit it or not. It was supposed to be a formation type mission. And I remember one thing when we turned off of the target and headed back to get on to head out overseas, and then, as we say, walk the islands down, because there's a string of them there that we later depended on to help us with our navigation. I just can't get over how many fighters I saw swarming down, way down, maybe 20,000 feet below us, 10, 15,000 feet below us. But as we made that turnoff, one fighter, just happened to look up there, and there he was, made a pass at us. And to this day, I'm not positive whether it was that one fighter that did the dirty damage, or was it just the operational problems that we ran with the transfer of fuel. That was a fairly common thing to happen. You get a transfer of fuel problem, and if you can't transfer your fuel, then you haven't got enough to get home. And when we first started operating, it was customary, at least the first mission, to keep the weight and balance right. You leave your fuel alone till after you leave the target.
It could have been that you could have caught something from that one fighter.
Could have, but it's just a possibility.
How many planes were there in the flight?
God, I don't remember. I really don't.
What normally would be a 10, 20, 15?
It could be all the way from one airplane to 600, scattered all up and down the island, see? And I'd say about half of the missions that we flew were individual night. Others were formation. The individual night, you'd go up on your own and drop your bombs.
Well, there were some with you this time, though, weren't there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, there were other people with us. Thank God, they were the ones that got the information they needed to at least have somebody knowledgeable to research out what they have to do out there and find out where the hell we were. We were about we were up near Kita, Iwo Jima. Mm-hmm. But the ocean currents, as I recall, and I still haven't resolved yet. We drifted down, seemed to me like an incredible distance from Quito down towards Iwo, which is south of there, because there were Japanese fighters or Japanese something up there moving around occasionally that were observable after we got down in the water.
How far back were you when you discovered that maybe you're going to have a problem?
Oh, it wasn't too long. I'd say shortly after we turned off at the target and that one fighter made a pass and we kind of settled down. That Clifford B., that was my engineer, Clifford B. Smith, Moberly, Missouri, civil engineer. Real smooth, got neat, top notch. Anyway, getting off subject. Cliff let me know that he couldn't transfer the fuel. And so we had a little time to kind of know, what the hell are we going to do? Are we going to, it doesn't take long to make up your mind that if you can ditch in daytime, you better, because you can at least control visually what you can't see at all at night. Yeah. And as it turned out later, it was we think was a real good decision because we had a tremendous swell, and then on top of that swell, we had a cross chop from the wind. Mm-hmm. And we decided that we'd take our chances and land with the swell. Trough of the swell, maybe, say. Although I'm not sure, I think that probably was the best move. But we took quite a beating from the wind, because boy, when that baby hit the water, the whole front end was just, and you're under.
Oh, it went under?
Immediately. You didn't have to get a breath. Now you're underwater. See?
Then when did it pop back up where you could get out?
Then it slowly came back. I can't say for sure about Chid, but I'm pretty sure that Chid, if I remember right, Chidester, he had to pull himself. See, before you ever ditch that dumb thing, you open up the window to the side of it, mm-hmm. and all that wind blowing, noisier than hell. You get that propped up, because that's the way the pilot goes out that window. Mm-hmm. And if he can't get out that window, or the co-pilot can't get out his, you're up the creek without a paddle. That's what way you get out. Well, when we hit the water, the whole front end of that airplane just wrinkled back like this. All of those streamers that form the formers on that front end that hold all that glass just came right back like that.
Ooh.
And poor old Chittister, he got a real bad laceration in his one leg there, big nice cut. But the bulletproof glass in front of us was mounted on a pretty sturdy frame, and it kept most of that crap from hitting us. But every single man that was in that front end, in fact in the back end too, got some form of minor to severe bruising and cuts and scratches and everything else. But when we hit the water, I mean, just like that. First there was a little, oh man, got this made, and then hell broke. Then hell broke loose. I mean, it was just like taking a steam engine and running it straight into a brick wall. Because you go from, of course, you're flying a little faster because you want a little control, and didn't want to chance it. And so, anyway, I'm leveling out now, and I can feel that little kiss that everybody wants to feel. You got it. But then hell broke loose. Just a little kiss and then bang. When that bang happened, the whole front end just that fast just filled up with water. I mean, not a gradual stuff. It's just like that. Now, I pull myself over to go out that window. I can't. Damn window slammed shut on me. Now I'm underwater. Pull through, go out the side. His window's open. I get out, and I remember as I got out of the water, I mean, it seemed like forever. Couldn't get to the top, but I thought, hell, I'm supposed to pull my Mae West now. So I pulled my Mae West, and poof. But the shock was so great for almost all of us. As far as I know, I was the only one that pulled his
Mae West?
Yeah. I mean, because when I got to the top, I saw the radio. Have you got enough? You want me to?
No, that's fine.
I saw the radio man, Edmund G. Smith, not Clifford B., the engineer. Edmund G. About this much of the propeller on the number 3 engine was sticking out. And he was holding on to it, and his eyes were glassy stared, and I couldn't get him loose for hell. And then go over. And then I saw Chid, but this time the plane had come up a little. Chid was over there trying to get the dinghy out.
Where was that?
The dinghy was on for his part of the action was on the right side. I had one on the left.
Was that in the fuselage or what?
Yes, it was in the top section of the fuselage, see? Top section outside. But old Chid and all of us, all of them were, shocked, like, just shocked. Chid got his handle open and popped it out, and now it's my turn, and I go around the airplane after I see the boys. Okay, I went around the airplane, I got on the wing, I didn't have trouble getting my dinghy out, but when that airplane hit, it not only crumpled in the front end, it just snapped, about a third way up on the fuselage, just snapped it off, and big, huge metal spear sticking out from all sides, and anybody that was, I just couldn't see taking a life raft and going in there with all the other crew members there. Mm-hmm. And so we backed off as much as we could and tried to pick up the ropes and the pieces and everything. And as a result of all of the things happening, we figured we're pretty lucky to get 7 men out of it.
How many were in there total?
Total crew, 11 men. Mm-hmm. But everybody in that center part, we lost them. There were 3. Now, we did lose the bombardier, but that came from a different thing. See, when you ditch, you don't put anybody up front. You get everybody in the back. Mm-hmm. Get them in the back. But the bombardier was a strong swimmer, a lifeguard. Mm-hmm. And Mueller, God, handsome devil, nice guy. And I never saw this, but one of the other fellows did. They said that he was on he'd gone back and he was on part of the ship, and that he had dove off into the water. I don't know what he was figuring, but he dove off in the water. But that's the last I ever saw it. And gasoline, I tell you, everything around, it was just all gasoline. I don't know what the test would have been on that liquid, but it was. Luckily, we didn't have a fire, so we looked pretty damn lucky.
So the 7 of you got in what? Two
life rafts, 2 7-man life rafts. There were 7 men, but we got 4 in one and 3 in the other.
And what time was that then?
Oh, that was just before dark.
Oh, okay.
Just before dark. We had enough time just before dark to kind of get ourselves together. In the melee, or whatever you want to call it, in all the excitement, we did lose some equipment, a few pieces here and there, but overall, considering the total picture, you can never replace a life, that's for sure. There were 4 of them that we lost we'd like to get. But I just think that even making an attempt, because the waves were high and up and down, and rubber life raft, and these spears banging up into it, and pull it away, and then let the current do the rest.
How long did it go before the ship actually sank?
Now, I didn't take a watch out and watch it, but I'm going to assume that my statement is based largely on what the training information is and what I kind of halfway remember, or not halfway, but what I do remember. I'd say about 3 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes for the back end, or no, for the front end. The tail broke off, and in about 3 or 4 minutes it was gone. But the tail gunner by that time had maneuvered himself back into a place where, if memory serves, I think he was just getting into the fuselage, which had gone up like this, and now you got this fuselage with all these metal pieces sticking out all over it. But to this day, I can still see that navigator, our Jay, the one that lives up in Martinez. He had a crew cut blonde, and I got the life raft right there, and I looked over there, and there's Jay. Help me. I mean, he was totally exhausted, and I was too, but I got a hold of his butt and got him up on the side, and I'm holding him and trying to get some air so I can get some strength back, and then together he'd grunt and I'd pull him up a little, and then pretty soon another grunt, and finally he got him in. Breathe a couple of times and start fishing the other one out. But
then did you tie the two together and get out away from it while it sank?
Right, we tied we tried to get, I don't think we really had it all together till after the thing sank. But it all happened just like that. The back end just broke and went down, and luckily and this is an awful thing, it's not very, it is certainly not a very good thing as a reflection of a commander to say, but the war is over and you might as well know the truth. Had one man couldn't swim. He relied solely on his
jacket,
and that was the that was the Irishman, R.J. Grinstead. And he had kind of, aren't you guys going to, he just seemed to have a look on his face like, it wasn't terror so much as pissed off. Aren't you guys going to get me off of here? That's kind of the expression that I read when I looked at him on that part of the ship that hadn't gone down, the radar man. There were some real funny things happened on that. After that was over, anyway,
Were there search planes then around when you ditched, or?
There were people from our squadron. I'd already made this arrangement with them. They followed us down to see how we were going to, if there'd be any survivors or not. And once they saw that there were, and they've got a good fix on us, now the next step is to see if there's anything available for air sea rescue. Because when we were briefed, there wasn't anything made No, on that mission, the rest of the missions there were, but on that mission, it was pointed out during the briefing that there were friendly ships in the area, but the coordination was not, I mean, it just wasn't. And it was only after the fact that we learned that you folks had been on interdiction up there and photography, getting ready for the big one there. And that they had received a call from your command base that there was a guy, there was a B-29 down. And so, and the next day, though, that was kind of, I'll never forget that experience in that water at night, December. God, if we'd have been another 10 or 15 degrees further north, we'd have been dead. But we were still far enough north at night in the middle of the winter. The only way, it's the only time in my life I ever snuggled up to a man and really enjoyed it, because it was cold. You were wet, and the wind's blowing, and everybody had some, from extreme to moderate shock, you know. I just can't get over it. I was the only one that pulled my, and we'd been trained for all this, see.
How long were you there then before you saw, I understood a Dumbo came up looking for you? Or?
Well, the next day, there were aircraft that had been sent up there from our outfit to look for us and to pinpoint us. And we drifted through the night, you know, through the night. Man, I can still see the belt of Orion coming up. Boy, will you ever come up, because I know just down there a ways is the sun, you know. It rained on us too, by the way. The idea was to catch some water in case we needed it, because we didn't know how the hell long we were going to be out there. But the next day, B-29 were circling over, and there was also a couple of other ships that were coming out from Evil, looking for us, that were not the ones we wanted to see. Yeah. And of course, the strategy was that if we had the time and we could plan it ahead, we would turn that tarp from the yellow side up to the blue side. We didn't recognize how hard it was to see, even with the yellow one. We found out later when we did some air-sea rescue missions. But that was the strategy. We were going to turn it over. I don't think we ever got around to that. We might have done that once. But the next day, when these guys came up and started looking for us, it was long about, I guess it was mid-afternoon, maybe a little bit after mid-afternoon. These guys would fly right over us and ignore us, and didn't know whether they wanted to shoot a flare or not, because there was enemy planes in that place too. But finally, as a last resort, I shot a flare, and luckily one of the guys in the B-29 that finally pinpointed us saw us, and then he never took his eyes off, and he told his pilot, start a circle, now bank it more, bank, yeah, there, and they had us. All the time this was going on, there was a reporter sitting up in the nose of that damn B-29 that we didn't know about there with a typewriter, and we didn't know that, but they flew over and dropped a streamer, and we paddled over and got this long yellow streamer, and then got the little pocket and the message out, typewritten message, what the heck's going on? This, Dolly's Folly will be here shortly before or just after dark. Well, who the hell's Dolly's Folly? We don't know who Dolly's Folly is. But then we began to put it must be a code name for some kind of rescue vessel. And then as night drew on, you know, you keep streamer and finally figured out Dolly's Folly will be there in your location shortly before or just after dark. Mm-hmm. Well, we were really, you know, really, what the hell's all this? And we're drifting too, and that's what I didn't like, because we're drifting closer and closer and closer to where the bad guys are, down towards Evil, say. Mm-hmm. And we'd seen 2 or 3 more planes. Now then, with all this activity up there, it's tipping off the bad guys that there's something going on out there, and maybe they better get their nose in it too. Yeah. And all this conglomerate, we were suffering a little bit from anxiety. Yeah. And along about a half hour before it really got dark. It was still dusk, and you could make out objects and see. I heard a weird sound. Thump, 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 thump. And then nothing. Thump, 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 thump. God damn, that's a diesel. I hope that's not the Japs. I hope that's not one of their cruisers. Thump, 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 thump. It took me a while to figure out that as we'd rise up,
You could hear it.
and we could hear it, but then when we get down behind one of those waves, you couldn't hear very much, except the wind blowing in your ears, because it was pretty windy out there. Thump, 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 thump. And this kept up, and the noise got a little louder. Now it's dark. Now it's real dark. Thump, thump. Afraid that you guys are going to lose us. Well, what are we going to do? We're going to shoot a flare, give them a chance. And of course, we elected to go. Well, go ahead, even though the Japs are there. So we fired a flare. And you guys homed in on us, and I'll never forget that blonde beard as long as I live, old Sev Gavitt. As I recall, I think it was Sev and Cole too. Mm-hmm. Ahoy! God damn, that beard looked good. And got all the men off and got them in, and of course, typical captain with my big yellow life raft shift, I was going to be damn sure I was the last one off. So I got off, and we got in the submarine, and we hadn't been in there but just a few seconds. Now I don't know if you guys were trying to scare the hell out of us or not, but I don't see the picture of the fellow that, and I think Commander Cole confirmed it too, that just about the time that we got it all just about shut down, a Japanese torpedo made a run on the sub, and the fish, missed, and we went on, and that was the end of that little episode for a while. It was quite a deal. And then when we got down, how much do you want me to say? Because I can.
That's fine. If talk, if it's, I can cut it down, but say everything. I don't want to miss anything.
Well, all right. I'll tell it just like I remembered.
Yeah.
We all went down, and of course we had on all this crap on our face in case we would get sunburned or something. And at first, Gavitt and all of the fellows that saw us, of the crew, mostly the officers, I think, to start with, because they were up front, most of them, and on top, they thought we had been out there so long we were starting to rot.
Yeah.
In the dark you couldn't tell for sure, but they soon saw that it was salve and stuff we'd put on to minimize the chance of a sunburn. Even though it had been colder than hell, when the sun came out, it got pretty warm. Mm-hmm. We went down, and on that little table, there was a little table up front where the fellows ate and played cards and everything else. There were 7 glasses, and I'll always remember this as long as I live, because, oh God, did I become an engineer quick. Each one of those glasses had a shot of the best tasting brandy I think I ever had tasted in my life. Really good brandy. But nobody was able to take any nourishment, except this red-faced Irishman, R.J. Grimstead, my radar operator. So we drank ours, and then, well, aren't they coming up? And Grimstead looked at me, and I looked at him. I'll go ahead. He drank it. We drank all 7 of those, empty stomach, sick. Ernie, I'm going to tell you, I don't think I've ever been any sicker in my life. But it's a hell of a time to become an engineer, because as we briefly reviewed over one of the telephone conversations, it took a while to remember when you're working that head up there to hold up on the cup. While you hold it up, turn on the valve that lets you read how much pressure you got in the line, and when it gets up to a certain point, now trap it. Now, while you're holding it up this damn thing all this time, now you open this up and flush it overboard. Well, I made a mistake and let it release, and hell, I got it all over me and everywhere else. But that was...
Well, that was the saying on board, that you weren't a true submariner until you were covered with stuff.
With stuff, that's right. Well, We all, I think, had our baptism of fire on that.
So there was only one person that was injured in getting out of it?
No, everybody had injuries.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody on board had injuries. But there was, as I remember, I think Chid had probably the biggest injury in his leg. I mean, it was proud flesh that you were looking at, where something sharp had pierced it. We all had the injuries, as far as I think, or had reason to believe, that they were all incurred as a result of the crash. Something to do with that. But I can remember one time getting hit over Tokyo on a later mission. I got hit, didn't even know I was hit, and I was bleeding like a stuck hog. You're just so, the adrenaline's pouring. Hell, you're doing your job, man. You're flying that beast and trying to do that thing right. And I got hit once over Tokyo on a later mission. And then again over Korea, and I didn't even know I was hit. Not bad, but just enough. How you cut yourself sometime, or you may get a pretty good slash, and what was that? And then you ignore it and go on and work. And pretty soon you see your legs your pants are getting wet, or something. But it was.
What do you recall on board ship? Any other than the unfortunate incident?
Oh Lord, there's just way too much to cover in a setting. But, well, humorous. I'm the captain. I didn't come off this way, but the people on board, the captain is a pretty important man. But I didn't take it that way. I was just an old rookie country boy pilot. But it took Cole a while, and it took Sev a while, and all of them to realize that a captain in the Army, because that was Army then, didn't pull the same, he didn't have the same pull. And what led up to this was, when I went on board, Cole gave me his bunk. Commander Cole gave me his bunk, and I slept in his bunk the first 2 nights. I slept in his bunk. I'm the captain. Returned, courtesy. But I think it was the third day, Sev very diplomatically reviewed with me the courtesies and also the true rank of those little pieces of metal that we all wear to show how ignorant or how important we are. And I got the message. So from there on, I shared with all the rest of the fellows. When they were on watch, why I'd sleep, and when I went on watch with them, why somebody else would sleep in there.
Well, what was your feelings the first time we submerged?
Well, I was pretty, on that first time, I was just glad to be, I was glad I was on something that could submerge, because I had confidence that it would, I felt better down there, more secure. Although as time went on and I began to imagine and think and look and recall that was an old ship, and that it couldn't go down more than, I think, 150 to 200 maybe.
300 max was pushing it.
You're darn right. And when the rivets start popping, I remember one time too, up at, see when you folks picked me up, you were just going, and after making a circle around Iwo, you all took off up to Tokyo on station. And while we were up there on station, in addition to this sampan incident, there was a convoy going. And from Japan, going down to help those bad guys out on Iwo. And I don't know for sure if the sub took a can that time or not, but there was one time it was like somebody throwing rocks on the side of the sub, and it just scared the you-know-what out of me. Boy.
You weren't alone.
No, and I'll tell you, Ernie, there was a couple of times there when I would have rather been up on the surface, especially during that, because I felt so helpless. What can I do down here if you happen to hit one,
What do you recall about when we sank that sampan?
Compassion and all the vibes that isn't this awful that we have to kill old men and old women, and yet they're the enemy, by God. You know.
What about those we brought on board?
I felt very sorry for that old man up front, because I had heard Gav say that when they saw the pieces of the sampan go by, there was an old lady on there.
Mm-hmm.
And I put two and two together, and they decided that it was his wife. And he was really, I mean, he was hurting, but he was very passive. Remember him. Now the fellow whose picture I think you showed me here a while ago, years later, he was more, he didn't seem to be too worried when I was close to him. He was more, yeah, he was more, okay, this is it, you know. And he couldn't talk very much, but, or he didn't, at least when I was up there. He knew what a B-24 was. He explained he wanted to talk, and you know how they put the big smile on. But that guy in the back was a big zero. He just was a big zero. He was, I guess he was scared and over whatever. And when he bit himself, and you and Sav and all of you dumped him out over the side, it's sorry it has to be, but that's your job, man, and that's what we're out there for. I hate to say it, as old as I am, but I'd probably do something like that tomorrow if it was me or them. Mm-hmm. Or me or the guy next door. I hope not you and me, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. I want to change that. What happened after that?
Okay. You folks took us back to our home base, Saipan, and it must have been a great event because, well, it was the first crew member they'd ever gotten back in that outfit. First one, and we'd lost quite a number of people. And so my squadron commander at that time, boy, and the group commander, Jack Doherty, boy, they were down there all smiles, and they treated me like I was God Almighty. You know, I mean, this is a big event for them, and me too, and them, and all of my crew. It was really something. But anyway, my commander and then the group commander, my group commander, took Cole and Gav and all of your officers. I don't know if they treated your enlisted personnel or not, but they took them all down to the club. And boy, they had a powwow down there for however long that you stayed in that, in the Saipan area. And then we were put on rest leave back at Oahu, go back to Oahu, and then they farmed us out to different places, down on Hawaii and Molokai and Maui and different places. And we knew that you folks were going back, because Cole had already tipped off my commander that they were going to leave and go. I don't remember the exact days, but I know that elements of the survivors, I think my navigator was one of them, met your people at the dock when you all pulled up in Hawaii. And as I understand, it was another lesser what do you, audacious deal, but it was a good
It was a very emotional time.
You better believe it, boy. You guys were putting your lives on the line every second, and we just had to sweat it for a few hours, and then if we were unlucky enough, you fish us out of the water.
Can you read these, or do you remember who the guys were and what their positions were?
Oh, I think I can do that without even looking at them.
Okay.
You betcha. These are the names, the original signatures of the 7 survivors. It's a little piece of the life raft that old Chid and his and people and me and mine and our little separate units, little piece of it, on which is written the location and the names. The names are L.O. Bricker, captain, aircraft commander and pilot. Clifford B. Smith, second lieutenant. He's the engineer. Richard J. Grinstead, sergeant. He was the radar operator. Kenneth R. Chittister, K.R. Chittister, was Kenneth R. Chittister, second lieutenant, co-pilot. And Edmund G. Smith, radio man, sergeant, radio man. J.L. Mickle, second lieutenant, navigator. And Stephen J. D'Arienzo, he was a little Italian fella from New York. And I don't recognize these people.
That was at a different time. That's our crew.
But I remember that very well, and I have a resume of the same at home.
And that's my piece of...
This is your piece right here.
That's my
see?
piece. I got it because I spotted you guys.
You betcha.
What did you guys do then? Did you stay together as a crew and
Oh yeah.
the remainder of your missions?
We stayed together as a crew, and come to think of it, I think we got an extension on our leave back in Hawaii for a week or so. And then we went back to Saipan. We got another ship. The name of the second ship, we called it Boomerang, because we wanted to go up and back. We didn't want to just make a one-way trip. We got four replacements for the men that didn't make it, and we went on and flew the rest of our missions.
Which was how many?
Well, we only flew 31 total, but in hours, if you figure about 15 hours on an average, some of them were. I think the longest one we flew was about 17 or 18 hours. The shortest one we flew was about 11 hours, depending on winds and all that other good stuff. Man, when you'd get on that jet stream, if you were lucky enough to stay up there coming home, you can make the whole trip in a couple hours, 3 hours, 2 or 3 hours.
Were the rest of them all on Japan?
Yes, on Japan, and also some, well, they either on Japan or just offshore looking for guys like us.
Mm-hmm.
You bet. We got in on every one of the fire raids that got so much publicity. I'm telling you, Ernie, you could see those fires 200 miles out, 150, 200 miles out. Just lit up the whole sky. You didn't even have to have a navigator to home in on the general area. Incredible, absolutely incredible.
And did you keep in touch with any of the guys after the war?
Not really, and I've always been sorry that I haven't, in a way, because I don't know, it's just a different. You depend on them, they depend on you, and it's a bond.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a bonding there. I did keep in touch with Clifford B. and Edmund G. Smith. Incidentally, they were both living in St. Louis at the time. And I wrote to Clifford a few times. Kenneth married a little lady there in Kansas, and I never did hear what they got. I tried several times to find out, but I never did hear. And then one time when I made contact with Clifford B., I found out that Clifford, or not Clifford, but the co-pilot, Chittister, was in Salt Lake City and was in real estate, like you were telling me. And I made it a special point I wanted to touch base with him again. So my youngest son and I, one summer, and this has been, I guess it's been at least probably 15, 20, maybe probably more than 20 years ago. We came back through Salt Lake after having made a trip east, and I sat down there with old Chid, and we went over some of the old war stories, and it was real great. He's married, that little lady he married. He was a handsome devil, as you can tell there, but I think he's...
Oh, he still is.
Oh, that's great. And he's got a real charm. He's just a real charming person. Okay. And he's a darn good pilot, I think.
That's what I forgot to ask you.
Darn good pilot.
About this name Pee-wee. Where did that come from?
Pee-wee was my wife's name. Pee-wee's dead. She died from unfortunately died from cancer. But Pee Wee was 5 feet tall. You and I are short. She'd have fit just right. 5 feet tall, and she only weighed about 89 pounds.
Oh my God.
Little bitty thing, but absolutely, of course I'm biased, of course, but an absolute charmer. If you wanted to get a date with her or her sister, she was a twin sisters, identical twins. If you wanted to get a date with her or her sister, there was a long line. I mean, the car, just like butterflies and insects go to the lighted candle. She was a very beautiful woman, and she also was just a nice, sweet little lady.
What'd she think about having an airplane named after her?
Oh, she thought that was incredible. She really thought that was something. And that's where the fellas here, I guess that was selfish. I kind of encouraged them to take that name, and I feel a little guilty about that now. I think the fellas had more input on the second naming on that other airplane. The second one was a Boomerang, but I always wanted that airplane to be named Pee Wee, and I didn't insist, but they want to please their boss, and so they let me have that name.
How long have you lived in the Fresno area?
I've lived here since March of 1962. That's roughly, 33 years? Be 33 years ago next March.
And I've been coming down here about 15 years, and I never knew you.
I've skated on this floor here with the kids. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. If I wasn't so old, I'd be tempted to ask you to let me come in and skate.
Oh, you're more than welcome anytime. It's been, 50 years?
50 years ago, Ernie. It was December 18th of 1944 when you fellas picked us up. And that was... let's see, it's 50 years and 3 months, or 2 months, I guess. Isn't that right?
Isn't it funny how you can recollect things that transpired 2 or 3 years at a time, and since then it's been 45 years or so, but you can remember those.
Some things just make an indelible memory on you. I just know that, now this may sound ridiculous and it may sound sentimental, but I don't believe there's been a day of my life, a single day, that I haven't, for a second or two, have a memory of the war and for sure the submarine crew. And I've just thought, my golly, isn't this interesting? I went on to become, after my military career, to become a teacher. And I just thought, hey, maybe I can help some of these kids. And I know I have. Some of them are in jail too, but I just know I have. And I thought, now, if that sub hadn't come along, there'd probably been somebody else could have done a better job, but at least made me feel good, just know that I could survive and be of some use to the community and also to other people. Although I live a reclusive lifestyle now, pretty much.
I was a tail gunner, Captain Bricker's crew. I'm sorry I was unable to attend the reunion, but I have my reasons. But I hope this tape in some way takes my place. I was a tail gunner, Captain Bricker's crew. I'm going to be at the reunion, but I hope this tape will sort of put me there in spirit anyhow. I want to give a to the crew of the Spearfish for the dramatic rescue at sea. Who knows what would have happened if they hadn't come along. I want to say hi to Chittister, CB, and Captain Bricker, and fond memories to the crew members who are not with us any longer. My wife, Arlene, will be asking me the questions that Ernie listed, and I hope to answer them to the best of my ability. Now remember, It's over 50 years. The memory is not as sharp. I'm over 50 years older. I'm over 50 pounds heavier, and I've lost over 50% of my hair. So bear with me, and here we go.
Steve, what do you remember about the first meeting of the rest of the crew?
Well, I was so excited being chosen to be on a crew that I really didn't notice anything about any of them. All I knew was they introduced themselves, and after that, it took a while, and I got to know them better, and I knew we had a great crew, and I was really honored to be on that crew.
What was your impression when you climbed into the Pee Wee for the first time?
Well, since we did most of our training in the B-17s, I was in awe of the size of the B-29. I guess it would be like the B-52 bomber next to the B-29, the difference in the modern bombers today. I was so surprised at the size, and I was honored to be chosen to fly as a crew member on one.
What were your feelings when you took off for that first raid to Japan?
Well, I guess I was excited. It was going to be an adventure, something it was the unknown. I didn't know what to think. I just went along. We were trained for a job, and I figured there'd be no problem. We'd do our job.
Describe your time during the flight in your gun station.
Well, being a tail gunner, there's not much room to roam around. I was back there in a space that's 4x4 with a fold-down seat and no room to maneuver at all. I had on my flak jacket and my flak helmet, and I had my receiver on, and I just waited till we got to the target.
What were your duties, and did it get lonely?
Well, I just explained it really was lonely because I was separated from the rest of the crew, and my duties were to defend the rear of the plane and to observe and report anything that was going to harm us.
What can you tell me about how you found out you were to ditch and what went through your mind?
Well, I was listening to Captain Bricker and CB talking, and I knew something was up, and the next thing I knew, Captain Bricker was giving us a choice: bail out or ditch. And I was happy when all the guys decided to ditch, because I didn't feel like I'd want to bail out over the Pacific Ocean in Japanese water, and not being a great swimmer, I thought, well, my chance would be better if we were all together.
Where were you in the aircraft when it hit the water?
I decided I didn't want to be in the tail. So I went in the radar radio room with Smitty and Grinstead, and just sat and waited for something to happen.
And what happened after that you can recall?
Well, it was vague, but it seems like when the plane landed, it really jolted. It was really much worse than I had expected, even though Captain Bricker did a great job. I think we hit some kind of swell or something, and it really damaged the ship. And I think what happened was, I to this day think the bottom was peeled off or whatever, and I went under the water, and I was under, and then I swam back up, and I came back into the radio room, and no one was there. The next thing I did, I went back to start at the back of the ship, and I saw Grinstead hanging over the escape hatch, and I went over and I talked to him, and I said, we got to get out of here. And the next thing, I looked out and I saw Captain Bricker and Smitty coming around a seven-man life raft. And then, no, that was not right. I saw CB and Chittister and Mickle coming around the 7, and Captain Bricker was on the wing releasing the other 7-man life raft. And that's the one, and then when he got it down, he and Smitty got aboard, and Grinstead and I, they told us to jump in the water, and Grinstead had a tremendous fear of water, and Captain Bricker was getting a little peeved because he wouldn't jump in the water. And I think he might have said something like, "You jump, we're going to leave you here." But anyway, he finally jumped. He and I both jumped in the water, and we swam to the 7-man life raft, and we were hanging. There was a rope around. We were hanging on the rope, and I looked at Captain Bricker and I said, "Captain Bricker, would you please take me on, pull me up on the 7-man life raft?" And he finally did, and then we paddled away from the plane, and in no time at all, it just seemed like the middle rose from the sea, and it just went right under. And I'm happy I wasn't a tail, because that looked like that was the first part that went under. So anyway, go ahead.
What do you remember about your time in the water? Your time in the water.
Oh, I remember it was all right as long as it was daylight. We knew one of the planes from our outfit flew down low. They spotted us. They flew down low, and they sort of gave us a message that they know we're here and they're going to do something about it. So that was all I can remember. Then at nighttime, I think I was scared out of my wits, because you would look out into the ocean and the waves just seemed like they were going to come right over and wash us right out, turn us right over. And during the night, we were tied together. Both rafts were tied together. And during the night, we heard like a hissing sound. We thought one of the life rafts might be leaking, but that never materialized. And an incident I remember the next day was Captain Bricker somehow had an apple. We did have a survival kit that was floating behind the life rafts, but Captain Bricker had an apple. And with the 4 of us in the one life raft, he said, "We're going to have to, I don't know how long we'll be out here, but we're going to eat this apple, and we're going to eat every bit, and everybody's going to get a piece." And he said, we're going to eat the pits and the core and the stem. And I believe Captain Bricker ate the stem and the pits, and we ate part of the apple.
Some of the others mentioned that they drew their pistols when they first saw a ship approaching. What were your thoughts?
Well, once again, I didn't know what to expect. I don't know what I would have done. If I was John Wayne, I would have known what I would have done. But since I wasn't John Wayne, I figured, hey, that's got to be an American vessel. It has to be. And of course, when it approached, we saw those beautiful American faces, some with beards. And the first thing I remember, they said, "Can you catch a line?" And we said, "We sure can."
What were your feelings after being brought aboard the Spearfish?
Well, being from Brooklyn, never being on a boat or in a plane, here I was on a plane, and now I'm in a boat and a submarine. And I was so excited. It was like a dream. I just couldn't believe what was happening. It was not a nightmare. It was a dream, and I was going along with it. And the people on the Spearfish, from the officers and the men, they treated us so royally. They just went out of their way to be so nice. And sometimes I think we were a pain in the neck. I was going to say something lower, but because we would try to get in line to eat before everybody else, because we weren't on duty, so we did that. But then we were finally told to lay back and let the crew eat first, which we did, and the food was delicious. I remember when we were in the bunk that horn that goes off when there's something that might be happening. And I think I almost jumped off I was on the top bunk, and I almost rolled out or fell out or jumped out. I was so nervous, I didn't know what was going on. And then there was a time when we, somehow they took some Japanese prisoners aboard, and we were given the job of watching the Japanese prisoners. That gave us something to do.
Did you have any bad thoughts about the submarine?
Well, I might have been a little claustrophobic, but other than that, it was so exciting. That's all I thought about, how exciting it was.
I understand that your crew went on to finish more missions to Japan after you got back.
Yeah, it took us a long time from our first to a second, a few months, a couple of months at least. After we went back to Saipan, we were interrogated, and then we were sent on arrest leave to Hawaii. And we were on the island of Oahu. And from there, we had an opportunity to stay with people on the island of the big island of Hawaii. They were plantation people, and they treated us just like we were family. I was alone with the family I was with, and Smitty and Grinstead was another, and then the officers were, I think, in a few other places. I don't remember if they were together or they was, but anyway, the people we stayed with were tremendous. Even though the woman I stayed was not much older than I was, she called me son, and I called her mom. They liked us so much that when we left, they cried, and so did we.
What have you done since the war?
Well, after the war was over, I went back to New York, and I bounced around, didn't have a job, collected my 52-20 for a while, played a lot of baseball with my friends, and then I decided I was going to take a trip out west, and I remembered Arlene. I hadn't been in contact with her for a while, so I wrote her a letter and said I was planning on taking a trip out west, and would she mind seeing me again? And she wrote back and said she'd be happy to. So I went out there, we reacquainted ourselves. I left after spending time with her in Nebraska and on her family's farm. Then I left, went back, and I wrote another letter and asked if she'd meet me. And she was working in Denver at the time, and I asked if I could meet her in Denver. And she says, okay. I went there, I proposed, and we got married in one of the biggest blizzards in the history of Colorado. After that, we moved back to New York. I worked in construction, my grandfather and uncles, and I said that wasn't for me, so I decided to go back to school. So I went to college in Greeley, and after graduation, I had one son before I went back to school, and while I was at school, I had another son, Mark and Dwayne, and I applied for jobs back in New York, went back to New York, got a teaching job. After 27 years teaching, I retired. We moved to the Poconos in Pennsylvania, where we lived for a few years. I substituted there. Then we moved back to New York. I started a substitute, and I changed, and I worked for a friend of mine. And then, after that, we moved back to Pennsylvania, to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and I substituted there, and I've been subbing there ever since, which is about 6 or 7 years.
Have you ever seen any of the crew since the service?
Yes, I've seen Chittister last year, and I've seen Smitty. I'm in contact with Chittister and Smitty. And Smitty, the radio operator, I did see him once. In fact, I visited he and his wife. My wife and I had dinner with them. And then the next time I went through, I talked to him on the phone, and then I only talked to him once more before he passed away, and that was when I went to visit CB in Missouri. And then Chittister, I played golf with him a few years ago. He's a good golfer, and I'm a hacker. And every other year, I've been going back to where my wife's sister and family live in Vernal, Utah, and then Chitz and I have a chance to visit. And Smitty writes his unique letters to each one. What else? Can I think of anything else? Oh, we're all in good health. My beautiful wife, my two handsome sons, and their handsome, beautiful father. We're all in good health, and we hope... Oh, I forgot. So I'm going to close now. Once again, thank to all you guys, and the best of health. And that's it.
Here this evening, and it seems like a year goes by quite rapidly when you think about it. It wasn't too long before we were all together once again. Now, this one is very special because we have Ken Chittister here and C.B. Smith. And of course, you all know they were the aviators that we picked up out of the water. And it's easy for us to all look at them and say, well, there they are, because there are only two of them. And then he looks around and sees all these faces and begins to wonder, well, now, who are they? Because I'm sure they don't know each and every one of us. So what I'm going to do is have Ken introduce his wife for us. Would you?
And this is my wife, Reen, who has put up with me pretty well, I would say, over all these years. But we're certainly happy to be here and just delighted to be able to have even a small part of your reunion. So, and we hope you well. We hope you have a safe trip home when this is all over. Thank you.
Thank you. And C.B. Smith would like to say a few words.
All right.
Is that an order or is it a command?
No, sounds like an order. I don't get to order anything.
Just because he's a couple of years older than I am. Well, I'm Cliff Smith, and I'm from the St. Louis area, and I'll forever be thankful first to Ken Chittister, because when that plane ditched, I was one of the first ones out. I wondered if anybody else was going to get out. And I climbed up to where the life raft compartments were, just on the fuselage right by the wing. And I was up there fumbling around, kind of in shock. And then up comes Chittister behind me. And I said, Chit, I'm having a hard time getting this open. And I said, I'll go over and try to get the other one open on the other side. And just about the time that I let loose of an antenna or something I was holding on to, a big wave came over and washed me clear off the plane, way back there. But Chittister, bless his heart, he held on. Meanwhile, I was back there with my GI shoes on, my 45, and all this ammunition and K rations and some apples and everything, an emergency vest and fishing kit. And I was, even though I'd been a lifeguard in my earlier years, and I really knew how to swim, I was having a hard time keeping up. So I pulled for the life vest thing on the CO2 thing that would blow up this Mae West. Didn't work. It was, a bad CO2 bottle. I pulled it, I thought, well, the other side will work. Pulled it, it didn't work. Meanwhile, I was struggling to keep up. And I thought, well, I can blow it up with this emergency tube. And I was out of breath and I couldn't use it. So I was just struggling back there. And I thought, well, this is it. I'm going to go down. And here, good old Chit, he gets that compartment open, gets that life raft out of there, and he comes back paddling for me. And so he saved my life. And then about 25 hours later, you guys in the spearfish came by, and you were risking your life. You're right in the midst of Japanese territory, and you were on the surface running at flank speed. And of course, you're risking your life too, because we thought you were Japanese and we had pistols aimed at you. And, of course, you didn't know what a poor shot I was. I'd be better off to throw the gun. But anyway, somebody, I think it was Ernie St. Germain, he was up on the prow, and he said, "Can you handle a line?" And we knew we were safe because he did speak English. And we lowered our guns, felt kind of embarrassed. And so then we asked if you guys would send us back, you know, take us back to Saipan, please. Commander Cole, he says, "No way." He says, "We got our orders." So we went right back up to Tokyo. Kept us for 26 days. Did me a real favor. I gained 15 pounds. I didn't know how well the Navy was fed until I got on that submarine. I can remember Christmas Day, we had turkey and all the fixings, and I think it was strawberry shortcake we had. My memory serves me.
Spam, wasn't it?
Nah, you didn't eat that low on the hog. So,
You didn't know what spam was.
when this thing came up, and knowing Chid lived here in Salt Lake City, I was bound to come out here. And Chid says, "Well, maybe we could do something for you fellas," and was hoping that maybe we could get you out here to have dinner with us. And maybe we could have a bar here. And we just thank you from the bottom of our heart. I mean, without you guys, we'd have been, you know, dead. Thank you.
Family. I told them about my grandchildren, one at a time, and I have 14. Then we had all the doors locked. They weren't going anywhere. They were listening. And then I started on the great-grandchildren, and there were only 3 of them. And about that time, we had to take them back anyway, so I was all through. But
guy sitting right over here, I'd sit before, but he brought so much to make this a special occasion for everybody that come here. And he feels that he owes us something here, but I don't feel that way, because I think it's kind of a mutual deal here. We've learned what a great guy he is, and CB here, and I think this thing works both ways. So we owe each other, and I hope this continues. And it's been a real pleasure for me. Thank you. With non-union help.
Yes, sir.
Push the red button.
I did.
At the bottom.
I see it. All right. Get back over there.
Am I in focus? It's another tape. I'm not going to be on this tape either.
You're out of focus.
You look better out of focus. Am I out of focus?
Yeah.
Well, grab the front.
This.
There. Turn it one way or the other.
God, Ernie, I think you look better out of focus.
Keep going. You got it?
Yeah, you're all right.
Okay, those of you who know me know my name is Ernie St. Germain. Those who don't know me don't give a damn anyway. So, anyway, I'm the one who puts the tapes together. I hope to have a whole series of them for you now that I'm in a new place. Incidentally, this is Deanna, my new friend and traveling mate. So,
Smile,
those of you
Deanna.
who haven't met her. The old story goes, you know, that the first liar doesn't have a chance. I got all kinds of stories here to choose from that I could top all the way along. It wouldn't be the truth, so. But I did want to clarify that with CB that it wasn't me up on the brow, I was up on lookout. And there was a couple other things, but with all the stories I heard tonight, I forgot what they were. I've still got...
Okay, good.
He's from Florida and New York. Oh, you are? He's from Florida. Which one? In New York. about finished. We had a couple, they took a third of our crew off, or give us a third reserve. I lost it. We had a kid that was making a small 4-cylinder engine. It fell off for a year. We finally had to put locks in our locker. Other than that, we never locked our locker.
Come to the podium. We have a table. Come to the podium. If you want under $50, come to the podium. 2 banquet tickets for tomorrow night. $50 at the podium. You want to come to the There's the hard fight to the rear.
Today, I would like to state the purpose of the U.S. submarine event of World War II and the reason for this ceremony. Our purpose is to perpetuate the memory of our shipmates who lost their lives during World War II. This we do through this memorial service. Today we honor and pay tribute to the 3,505 shipmates still on patrol in the 52 submarines that are their eternal resting place. It should never be forgotten that one of every 4 men who served on submarines during World War II and one of every 3 submarines operating during those long years never returned from patrol. Our shipmates, part of a force that numbered less than 2% of all the United States Naval's personnel, accounted for more than 55% of all enemy shipping sunk, both naval and merchant vessels. Over 5.25 million tons of enemy ships, 1,178 merchant and 214 naval were destroyed by this small gallant force. For those of us who served in the submarine force, this is indeed a solemn ceremony. To our friends here today, we ask that you share this solemn ceremony with us. We therefore dedicate this memorial service to the valiant submarine men of the United States Navy who lost their lives during and since World War II. May they rest in peace in the oceans of the world that they made safe and free for all. We salute you, O gallant men still on patrol. The lost submarines we honor today are color guard dismissed, please. So would everybody please rise for the bell tolling ceremony, please. Sea Line, damaged by a Japanese aircraft, then destroyed at Kafidi Navy Yard to prevent her capture. 4 men lost. S-36, destroyed after running aground in Makassar Straits, No men lost. S-26, sunk by collision with USS P-460 in Gulf of Panama. 46 men lost. Shark 1, sunk by Japanese warships off the Celebes Islands. All hands lost. Perch, scuttled after heavy depth charging between Java and Borneo. 6 men died in a prisoner of war camp. S-27, grounded on Amchica Island, then destroyed by her own crew. No men lost. S-39, destroyed after grounding on a reef south of Roselle Island. No men lost. Grenion, sunk by unknown causes off Akiska Island in the Aleutians. All hands lost. Argonaut, sunk by Japanese destroyers between Leyte and Rabaul. All hands lost. Amberjack, presumed sunk by Japanese PT boat and subchaser off Rabaul in the Buka Shortland Sea area. All hands lost. Grampus, sunk by Japanese destroyers in the Blackett Straits. All hands lost. Triton, sunk by Japanese destroyers in the Solomon Bismarck area. All hands lost. Pickerel, sunk by enemy action off the coast of Honshu, Japan. All hands lost. Grenadier, damaged by Japanese aircraft and scuttled in the Straits of Malacca near Penang. 4 men died in prisoner of war camp. Runner, sunk by unknown causes off the northern tip of Honshu. All hands lost. We will now toll 3 bells to pay tribute to all the members of the U.S. submarine veterans of World War II who have joined their 3,505 shipmates on their final and eternal patrol.
May God add His blessing, put His Spirit upon all those who have gone. Amen. Now, God, as we end our memorial service, We ask thy blessing upon each and every one of us, that as we go forth into the world, we take the spirit of those who have gone before with us, that they may not be forgotten, but that they may rest in peace, knowing that the deeds they did linger on, that the freedom, the understanding, the new generation, the new country will be with us. Grant, O God, thy peace upon us, even as we go. Be with us until we return again, to pay tribute to the man who gave, the men who give. Be with those upon the sea and underneath, who protect us in all the ways we go. Our president, our leaders. Amen.
That concludes the memorial services. Thank you very much for being here.
In parting, I would like to say that the wreath will be placed in the Pacific Ocean at an appropriate time.
Rings or something on it. I had that thing worked out, just about finished. We had a couple, they took a third of our crew off, or gives a third reserve. I lost, didn't get a kid that was making an all four-cylinder engine. Just about lost for a year. We finally had to put locks on our locks.